It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
I want somebody who's passionate. I want somebody who can talk to people like a real person, who can make people feel things, who can make people want to follow them.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Want to join the conversation?
I just wanted to thank your station for consistently reporting the facts.
In a world of clickbait headlines, your station is who I trust for the real news.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
I am very, very, very pleased to welcome back Paul Lisnek is here. You remember him from WGN. Now you can follow him. He does a show called Paul on Politics. You can find it on Substack. You can find it on YouTube. And, you know, when you've got politics in your blood, you just can't stop. And Paul is one of the most insightful voices on politics. So I am so glad that he has created this show and joins us now to talk about that and other things. Hello, Paul.
Well, good to see you. Yeah, you know, after leaving GN, I did take a break for quite a while, and as you know, turned to my other love of theater and do Curtain Call Chicago on YouTube, et cetera. But, you know, there's so much going on a daily basis, and people sending me questions on social media saying, can you address this? I thought it's time to come back. So, yes, Paul on Politics, now there on YouTube and Spotify and all those places. Mike Quigley was my guest last week. This week, Aaron Del Mar, running for the Republican position of Lieutenant Governor in Illinois, will be my guest. So going to try and keep it balanced as we go and make everybody kind of happy with folks from both sides of the aisle.
You know, I think that is so important. I have told people who listen to this show over and over again, you know, if you're a Republican, heck, if you're even a MAGA Republican, I don't care if you want to call in and talk to me about an issue. Where I draw the line is I will not let people use the airwaves to tell lies. And, you know, it seems to me, you know, I've talked to conservatives many, many times. Heck, I just had on Ray LaHood, I think last week, who is you should talk to him. He is delightful. And just don't ask him about his son, because I don't think the two of them talk politics
You
much.
know, I found that because I haven't talked to Ray in years, but I would interview his son, Darren, and I, too, found the same thing. I don't know what, if anything, is going on there, but I always found that exploring that, other than saying, say hi to your dad, was about as far as I would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And, you know, you don't want a political show to be an echo chamber. You read too much about people who can't express ideas well or learn new things because they live in the middle of an echo chamber. And I've never wanted to be an echo chamber. I always want to, each show, I'm hoping somebody comes away with something that they didn't know before, some idea that they didn't have before, some take on current events that they didn't have before. What would you say your mission statement is for Paul on Politics?
Well, I think, first of all, you got part of it, which was to say, you know, Democrat Mike Quigley last week, Republican Aaron Del Mar this week. That's part of it, both sides. But secondly, I think, look, part of my background, you know, I was a teacher for many years and teaching the bar review course and teaching at college and all of that. And I just think the bottom line is people need to uncover answers for themselves. And what you say all the time, and I think it's part of WCPT, is it's about the facts. So what I try and do, even as I watch political television shows, I try and listen for who there is speaking the party line, not factually, but just clearly has been given a statement to make where you can say, I don't know what's backing that up. And then others that you can watch or listen to who truly can back it up with some statistics, and then balance it all for yourself to decide what it is that's going on. I mean, example, we've got so much to talk about today, but the war in Iran. You have President Trump saying everything from the war's over, we control the strait, we're running it all. His latest is, I don't want to negotiate with them so quickly. We'll make them wait. They're begging to negotiate. And you have Iran basically saying, we're not talking to them. What are you in fact, the worst is yet to come, potentially, with what we're going to do. So, you know, you have to balance all that and say, who's telling me the truth, and try and work your way there. And through all the great guests you have and your discussion, I think you work your way to what maybe the reality of it might be, at least for the moment.
Well, I think that's the responsible thing to do, and that's the responsible way to cover politics. And I mean, I do opinion radio. I do not consider myself a journalist anymore. But when I was a journalist, I didn't let my own opinions color or bias any of my reporting. And the only reason why I think I was successful at that, Paul, is after I first started doing this radio show, I remember there was a woman who called in and she said that she used to watch me on television, and she paused and she said, "I never knew you had opinions." And I was like, that is such a compliment. I don't know if you meant it that way, but
right.
that really was a compliment because, you know how it is when you're reporting on politics as a journalist. You really keep yourself and your own opinions out of the story.
And that doesn't mean, Joan, that's what people will hear. I mean, when I get stopped on the street or just comments from people in social media, they'll often say either I don't like your commentary. And I respond by going, please understand, I am not a commentator. I'm an analyst. There's a big difference. You will never hear me say what I think about that. Now, that being said, people will hear things, and I've been called, I get it from both sides, right? So if I'm talking to a Democrat, I'm accused of being a Republican because my questions tend to be in that area, vice versa as well. But, one of the great ones who, good friend of yours, of mine from the past, but Dick Kay, who was one of the great political reporters. You never knew what he thought about anything. But when he retired and said, that's it, I'm done, he went on to WCPT for quite a while and basically said, you know what, I'm just going to be me now. And he was entitled to do that. But you never heard him do that when he was with NBC or on the stations because, as you say, the reporter's job, or in my case, the analyst's job, is not to tell you it doesn't matter what I think. I want you to come to your conclusion. I just want to present, in my case, both sides to you so you can get your way there.
And when Dick Kay worked for NBC, he did try to be even-handed. He was hard on everybody. He was cranky with everybody, whatever side of the aisle you were on.
He was, but he was also beloved. Doogie was a beloved guy, and so I was just so happy for him. I did his show, from time to time with him at the end. It was just nice to see him kind of take a deep breath and just say what he wanted to say.
Yeah, it was great. I'm talking to Paul Lisnek. You should be watching his show, Paul on Politics. You can see it on Substack. You can see it on YouTube. We are going to take a break, and yes, we are actually going to talk about current events when we come back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Paul Lisnek from WGN. Now you can find him when you look up Paul on Politics. It is on Substack. It is on YouTube. He is still following the current events of the day. And one of the things that I haven't talked about that I know that you have paid attention to is what is going on at the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center lawyers went to court. Donald Trump's name had to come off. It was put up there illegally. They took the name down, was behind a tarp that they refused to take down. Initially, Paul, I thought, well, I don't know if it was around the 4th of July, and I thought, well, he doesn't want to be embarrassed because he's got all these big plans for the 4th and all these wrestling things, and, he doesn't want people to think about that. But then the tarp stayed up, and now we find that the board of the Kennedy Center is trying a workaround. They want to get Trump's name on that building so badly that they will use any loophole or that they can find. And now they're trying to say, well, we're going to put up that it's the Kennedy Center, something like, what is it, Paul? Like rehabbed by Donald Trump? What is exactly they're doing?
Yeah, well, you're right. What they're trying to do is get his name up there by saying it's been restored and rehabilitated by Donald J. Trump. So here's what your listeners need to understand. This building is not like any building in Washington where, people, supporters of the president can say, well, I think his name should be up there because he's going to put marble everywhere. So let's put his name up there. This is a memorial, just like the Lincoln Memorial and the Jefferson Memorial. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. This building is the memorial. It's a little different because it's also a center for the arts, but it was passed by Congress and built as a memorial to a slain, fallen president. And so the law literally that created this back in the 60s basically says this building shall be named the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center, and the name cannot be changed without an act of Congress. So that, when you say they did it illegally, you're right, because the law requires the name stay the same. So when Trump put his name up there the first time, there was no question it was going to get coming down because it went against the law. Sure enough, that's what happened. And I think what people need to understand again is it's not like any building that he wants to put, because he puts his name on lots of buildings and his pictures on the Department of Justice and so much to talk about. But with regard to this building, he illegally could not do it. So you're right. They took the name down under the dark of night, put up the things, and I'm wondering how long are these schmatas going to stay in the building? And I thought the same thing. Well, his birthday's coming up, and they're going to do the wrestling match. You could come up with reasons. He'll say, "Slow it down, guys." They're still up there, and what is happening now is they don't give up. You remember, he doesn't believe in losing. He just doesn't take no for an answer. It looked like he had accepted the loss because when the court ruled against him, he basically said, "The heck with the Kennedy Center. I don't care anymore."
Yeah.
That's not the case. So what has happened is the existing board, which is all filled with Trump appointees, he fired everybody else who was on the board. So these are people like his chief of staff, and I think Uma Vance is on there, and the vice president's wife. Those are the folks who are on here. They said, well, we're going to put his name up there as a restorer of the building. Well, how are you getting around that law? Well, what you just said before was true, which is, to me, they're being too cute by half. They're basically saying, well, we're not going to name it after him. We're going to put him up there like he's a producer, like he's whatever, and we can get away with that. Now, that's what will the courts do with that? I still think it goes against it. I think the law is pretty clear. You need an act of Congress. I think in the end he loses on this, but if it ultimately gets to the Supreme Court, once again with the Supreme Court, which in my view is no longer a kind of nonpartisan entity it's supposed to be. It's pretty partisan at this point. I can see where you get a 5-2 or 6-3 decision, which says, yeah, they're not really renaming it, so he can go ahead and do that. But I think until that resolution is there, I think there's not yet been a court that's made him take the tarps down. I will tell you there is an upcoming date where a judge who's been monitoring this wants a report about what you're doing, what's going to happen. So we may get some kind of action. But the right result, and I say that as a lawyer, not a political analyst, the right result legally is that his name cannot be on the building. Not that building. Go put it on somewhere else, but not that one, because that is a memorial to a slain president. It literally would be no different than if he said, this is the Martin Luther King Jr. and Donald J. Trump memorial. That would be so absurd that people go, you can't do that. Well, right. It's the very same thing when you're talking about the Kennedy Center, but some people draw a distinction. There is no distinction.
Why do you think he's so obsessed with having his name on everything? Do you think it's because truly, I know he has a very strong sense of self, but I think deep down he thinks that once he's gone, he'll be either reviled or maybe even worse, forgotten. And he doesn't want that to happen. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's very, very ill and figures this is his last hurrah. I don't know what's going on, Paul, but it is just absurd. It's the Kennedy Center. You can now get the special Donald Trump passport. There's a coin that the Mint's going to put out. I mean, good God. He doesn't realize how pathetic this all looks. But I really am puzzled sometimes by what motivates it. What do you think?
Well, for one thing, by the way, remember, he never says he's ordered any of this stuff. Everybody, according to him, has come to him with the idea, we should put your face on the $250 bill, which is illegal, and that didn't come around. Okay, well, we'll put it on a coin because Woodrow Wilson once did, right? So basically, if you listen to him, none of this is his idea. It's all being done by other people, and they come to him and how it's the greatest honor that he's doing it. Look, I try and analyze. Part of my role as an analyst is to say, if I loved President Trump, how would would I explain this? Because if I loved him, I would probably say, it's okay to do these things, or, he wants the arc, which if you don't think that's not going to be called the arc to Trump or the Trump arc or something down the line, you're kidding yourself, and all these other things. I actually, when you analyze it, even people who love him, I think would say, well, he deserves everything. Remember, there's people, John Cornyn was going to name some major highway in Texas after him before he didn't get Trump's endorsement for the primary. That thought went away. We're not going to name him for that. He gets the airport in West Palm Beach has come his way. I do think, now let's play psychologist here, and I'll put on my PhD in communication and psychology hat, which is I do think it is about his sense of self. I do think he fears that when he's gone, not that he would be forgotten, but there won't be enough recognition of him and his legacy. It's like going to North Korea or Russia or these places where that the dictator leader there is everywhere. I think he's trying to get his face everywhere. The real question, it's going to be really interesting, is for you and I to have a chat in a couple of years, because let's pretend for a moment that there is a Democratic president, whoever it is, Gavin Newsom, Judd Pritzker, whoever it is. Let's say there's a Democratic president. Ordinarily, I would say, well, that Democratic president, man, first thing that they'll do when they walk in that Oval Office is say, get the gold off the wall, get rid of it, and let's return this back to the way it was. Now, you can do that with some things. I don't know what you do about an East Wing that's been knocked down and whether or not there's a ballroom. If the ballroom does exist, he wants it to be the Trump ballroom. If you are a Democratic president, you say, no, it's now going to be called, and you can call it whatever you want, but just some other name. The problem is, I think Democrats are so I'm just going to use the word weak when it comes to confrontation. They don't want to disrupt things. They don't want to make anybody upset. That in the end, they'll say, let it be. It's one of the reasons January 6th response was what it was. Merrick Garland was too worried. People would think he was being political, so let's do nothing about anything for a year and a half.
That was such a disappointment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's my problem. I think whereas, a Republican president, if all of this were a Democrat doing it, would come in and say, get this stuff out of here. I want it done in 24 hours. You just feel like the Democrats will step in and say, let's get along to go along. But now you're starting to see a little difference there. This may be on our agenda as well while we're together. But what John Ossoff is doing, the first Democrat who's sort of out there, he got himself, I won't say hot water, but he certainly stirred up a lot when he gave a speech yesterday, I think it was, where he's talking about Donald Trump is too busy with the vanity projects. He made a little comment about one of the assistants that he brought with him into the catering cart. He left Marco Rubio. We're talking about the Air Force One situation where they snuck him out on another plane.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning of the show, because there's a lot of reporting on, the most recent is probably MSN.com, that Karoline Leavitt was seen in a very tense conversation with Donald Trump and Natalie Harp, and then very shortly after that, she announced her resignation. Yep. By all accounts, here she is, a woman who's just had her second child, and he takes Natalie Harp in the catering container, and not somebody who is his loyal person who's got a family. He puts them on the plane, rightly or wrongly, whatever you believe, whether the threat was real or not. Donald Trump feels there's a possibility that this plane will be blown from the sky, and he leaves Karoline Leavitt on it.
Yeah, to me, that's stunning. Again, John Ossoff took it further in terms of some of his comments with regard to Natalie Harp. I'm not going to go there. But the bottom line to it is, look, we want the president to be safe. I'm sure you made this point at the beginning of the show, which is, look, he's got to do what the Secret Service tells him to do. And if the Secret Service says you're going in that food cart and you're going on this other plane, I don't fault him for that. I don't fault anybody if that was the call. I do believe that the Secret Service also has a responsibility. Not that I do believe. They have a charge to also protect cabinet members and other critical people. So what we may never know is the story in terms of, so how did Marco Rubio and Bessent end up remaining back on Air Force One if this threat was seen to be serious? Or was the threat maybe not as serious and they didn't have to go through this? That will probably get cleared up. A Maggie Haberman of the world will probably do some reporting on that one day, and we'll get some answers. For right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions. But the bottom line is the decisions he made, if they were his, he had to approve them. President approves everything. You do have to step back and say, what does it say about a person who will, forgetting other people, has this new mom, as you say, Karoline Leavitt, been with him from pretty much from day one. You will never find a more adamant press secretary who will, do your bidding and then basically say it's a small risk, but we're leaving you back, and not even tell, because I don't think she knew what the deal was. And the fact that she resigned so quickly after, it's hard to believe there's some other explanation. It doesn't mean there isn't one, though.
Yeah. I'm speaking with Paul Lisnek. You can find him if you follow Paul on Politics, Substack, YouTube. We're going to take a break and be back with more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
With me is Paul Lisnek. You can find him on Substack, and you can find him on YouTube, Paul on Politics. We have so much to talk about, and it's so much fun to talk to you, Paul, that we're not going to get through nearly anything of any significance on this list.
We don't have 3 hours to go?
I know. It's always so much fun to talk to somebody who is as knowledgeable and as excited about some of this weird stuff as I am. So
it is my pleasure.
Is that a compliment? I hope it is. I mean it as a compliment. I want to talk to you about, more things having to do with Donald Trump. I don't understand, with the midterms coming, why he seems to be doing everything possible to make sure the Republicans lose big. I mean, the fact that he told people that when it comes to higher gas prices, that basically, if they want to be patriotic, they just kind of have to suck it up for now. And it's not that big a deal. I mean, he seems to be trying to alienate every independent that might have considered voting for a Republican. I don't get it.
Well, looking at this from a lot of different directions, here's the best I'm coming up with, which is, and this is related to our previous conversation. Why does he want everything named after him? Why does he want his name everywhere? There's no question that whatever he is a narcissist and all the things that go with that. So the answer to this issue, the way I look at it, is that people say he doesn't care if Republicans win. Don't think it's about that he doesn't care if Republicans win. I do think that it's about the fact that he knows he's not on the ballot. So in the end, I promise you that if Democrats take, say, the House, which statistically they should, the Senate will see, because I think the whole democratic socialism thing may be presenting some issues. But I think that Trump really wants the ability to be able to say, you see, without me on the ballot, without people being able to vote for me, they don't really care about the Republicans. I am the Republican Party. And now what that means for 2028, I mean, he tries to be the kingmaker, wants to be the kingmaker. So I think a lot of what he's doing, you're right, kind of ensures the fact that Republicans are going to have a really, really tough time but he's not very popular right now. A new poll coming out today, I think from Ipsos, puts him at about 32% or 35. 32 is the magic number for Democrats, because if he's at a 32% rating, which is where George W. Bush was back in the early 2000s, that is most likely when the Democrats take power and control of probably both houses. But that being said, I think this is about, he wants to believe that it's all about him. He's the king of it all. So he really doesn't care if Republicans lose, not to see them lose, but just to show that without him, nobody can win. I think that's what it's about.
You are 100% correct about that, that it will almost please him more, I think, if Republicans do badly with his name not on the ballot, even though he has complained, if the Democrats win the House again, I'm going to be impeached again. Oh, and by the way, that Ipsos poll, they asked people how they felt about him involving us in Iran, and do they support his efforts in Iran? The support for the Iran war is down to 27%. So even MAGAs are walking away from that one.
Because they're feeling it at the gas pump. And this was Joe Biden's problem several years ago, of course, which was to say, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. You're good. Look at all the statistics. And by the way, he was right that economically, when you looked at the market, things were strong. It's strong under Trump as well. But voters go to the grocery store like you and I do. They go to the gas station. So you can tell me what you want about the fact that the market's never been higher and it's hitting new heights. But if every week I'm going, but my paycheck just went to pay for my groceries, that's where it's going to hit. And I think that the Republicans who are encouraging him, he's supposed to be on a nationwide tour right now talking about affordability and those issues. He's not doing that tour very much. He's hardly going out. Secondly, the question is how many Republicans, truthfully, who are running for office want him standing next to them, and especially because if he is, his speech isn't going to be how great that candidate is, and look how great the country is and the economy is right now, because no one would buy that anyway. He's going to turn to these other issues. So I think that's what it's all about, and I just think that, for him, even in 2028, I think there's an argument that he won't even necessarily get behind the Republican candidate, whoever it is, because if it's a Democrat, that allows him to say, you see, I'm probably the last Republican president you'll ever have. I was the best. He said that the other day, too. Polls show that I am the best president that there ever was. I don't know what poll he was talking about. I can't find it.
Well, I heard there were a couple of people discussing on, I don't know if it was CNN, the fact that Maggie Haberman that was recounting this story, and she said that he was talking. They went into the Oval Office, she and Jonathan Swan,
yes.
and the agreement was this is going to be a fact check. We're coming out with this book, and we're going to give you the opportunity to fact check some stuff.
Right.
And part of the discussion was she said he handed her a piece of paper that had names like Stalin and Hitler, and he said, a historian made this list and said, I am more powerful than all of them. Then it wasn't like Gandhi or Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy. It was all people who had been dictators.
Right.
Stalin, like I said, Hitler. And she thought that was very interesting. And then he told her, a historian made that list.
I'm going to give you the setup, Joan. Who made the list?
Maggie Haberman went on to say the list was put together by a guy who became famous when he caddied for Gary Player.
Exactly. This was a list put together by a golf caddy. All due respect to golf caddies. I mean, God bless them. I wish them well. But I don't know that I would look to a golf caddy to create the list of the greatest, most powerful people of all time, unless you want to put Arnold Palmer at the top of the list or something like that. It is just such nonsense, but you're right. You're sitting down with Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, who are about to put this book out. Now, he knows Maggie Haberman well. She wrote another biography about him called Confidence Man. So he already knows what she's capable of and how smart she is, although now, he calls her Maggot Haberman. He's got names for, but but the bottom line is he knows what they can do. So why he didn't use that as an opportunity to really try and shape the truth as he wanted to see it is really incredible. And as you know, almost every time he's doing any kind of conference right now, even though it's supposed to be called for the war in Iran or whatever, it's only minutes until the conversation turns to the ballroom and the marble and all the things that he's doing with it. So he would have made a phenomenal first lady. And I have to say,
I agree with you 1,000%.
Because he's doing everything. I don't like what he's doing. I happen to like the East Wing.
He wants
I liked
to
it when I went to a party there.
He wants to throw parties.
Yes. And Melania, by the way, who has not been seen since, I believe, July 4th, so I don't know what she's doing and where she is, and she can do what she wants. But the point is, she might be going, you know what, Donald? You're doing my job, so I'm leaving. I don't know. Yeah. But he literally is doing the decorating, the parts of it. And, of course, he would say, and his fans would say, he's a builder. This is what he does. I don't think, even the people who love Donald Trump, I don't think elected him to say, with this guy, we're getting a ballroom.
Yeah.
I just don't think that was the agenda for people.
Well, when Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan went in to the Oval Office, she said there were a bunch of photographs on the desk, and she assumed it was a bunch of stuff to do with the Iran war. And he held up the photographs, and they were all of trees. And he said, see these trees? I really like trees. Like, we're going to put trees here, we're going to put trees there. And she said that she was just dumbfounded that with the Iran war in full tilt, he wanted to talk to her about trees. You're absolutely right. He's the perfect first lady, though I do think what I read is that Apparently, the documentary wasn't enough. Apparently, Jeff Bezos is going to produce Melania, the television show.
Yeah, there's the mini-series on its way, showing you even more than the. And I have to admit, I didn't quite catch the documentary, so
Me neither.
I missed it. But the documentary series, well, that we'll see. But even with all the stuff that's making front page news and all of that, there is so much. Look, I'm not a. I love the environment and all that. I'm not an expert in the environment and things, but it's tough for me to pick up a newspaper every day. I still read newspapers, and to go on and the latest. They're talking about. Just getting rid of in this protected lands, trees and land and natural preserves in place for protected wildlife and all these things. This stuff is all going away. The laws are literally changing by the day. And if your listeners don't know what I'm talking about, just go to Google and just start putting in, tree destruction of national forests.
We got to be drilling there, and we got to be selling some of that stuff off to private people because, it costs money to maintain all those trees and everything. And, so let's just turn it over to the private sector. They can tear it apart. They can drill. They can mine, whatever they want to do, as long as they pay the price.
Well, and that's the point. They have given him so much money. There's also, this has been reported, and again, as a lawyer, as somebody who trained the Department of Justice, there apparently is an order from the White House which is telling DOJ that they should be going after what I'll call sort of low-level crime, not going after this upper-level stuff. And I don't know if this is on your agenda with me for today's conversation, but as a lawyer, I was so stunned. If you happen to watch Todd Blanche make his appearance on Meet the Press over the weekend, where he, in a sentence, literally said, of course the Department of Justice isn't independent from the president. This is where that is insane. And in fact, there's a famous story of Barack Obama when people said, well, Eric Holder, he was behind Obama. When he got appointed, Obama looked at him and said, I'm appointing you, but you are not my lawyer. You are the lawyer for the people of the United States. And that's the right answer. And this attorney general apparently is clearly, and he doesn't hide it, taking his orders from the president. That is such danger. And you might say, well, danger for who? How about the former Olympian who was just prosecuted until they realized they had no charges for destroying the reflecting pool? And when you get the final answer, which is, oops, sorry, we made a mistake, the answer to Todd Blanche is, no, get him. I said get him, because I will not be wrong. We're not going to say it's the job that was done. We're going to say he destroyed. And now you have innocent people. It's you, it's me, it's anybody who's out there who find yourself in the wrong place, and you've got the government coming after you. To me, that's one of the most terrifying things which we're dealing with right now.
Well, Paul, Todd Blanche explained that Donald Trump is the government. So don't you see, by doing what Donald Trump wants him to do, he is doing what the government needs, because Donald Trump is the government.
And to answer that, Joan, because look, as you have Republicans listening to you, maybe MAGA people, maybe Trump supporters, I always I want to balance that off, because they might be saying, listen to these two people being very liberal. No, that's not the point. Your point is well taken, but for this legal reason. Even if I love Donald Trump, even if I approve of everything he's doing, tear down all the trees in the country, because I love you, Trump, do it all. The problem is he's doing everything unconstitutionally and against the law. That's the problem I have. So whether you love what he's doing or you don't love what he's doing, the issue I have is when you don't follow the law and the Constitution, that's when chaos exudes, and that's where we are right now. There is no Congress. Congress doesn't exist. So essentially, the president can just sign orders every day of the week doing things, because there's no one to stop any of it.
The checks and balances are gone.
Non-existent. They're gone. And you have them in the lower courts. That's the only place we have a check right now, lower courts, who then, if it makes it to the Supreme Court, more likely than not, get overturned.
Paul Lisnek and I are going to take a break. We are going to return with much more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
And Paul Lisnek is here. I may have mentioned that he is doing a new political show. It is called Paul on Politics. It is on Substack. It is on YouTube. Is it on any other channels, Paul?
It is on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Radio. It's pretty much anywhere you get your podcast, you can find it as well.
Well, now I'm jealous.
And I hope people will subscribe. Got to have them subscribe. If you want to watch it, you want to do that on YouTube. But if you want to just listen to it while you're walking the dog, then Spotify and Amazon and Apple and all of those are just fine.
Well, you probably know this, but I was having dinner many, many months ago, probably last summer, with Linda Yu and one of her adopted granddaughters, and I was talking to this young woman about podcasts. And I was like, do you listen to podcasts? And she was like, oh, my God, I sure do. And then she thought for a minute and she said, well, actually, I watch my podcasts on YouTube. And I think that is, when podcasts first started, it was audio only and you would listen to it. But for the younger generation who's used to these podcasters who set up a camera, even if the camera is just them sitting there in a room behind a microphone, that's what they want. They want that visual component as well. So the fact that you're doing that is brilliant, I think.
Well, it is where people are going today, and it's not just, certainly it is young people, but, you know as well as me, if I stop somebody who's in their 30s or 40s, and you said, and even just talk about, did you watch television? They just say, I don't watch TV anymore. And look, you and I grew up in TV, we get it, but today, that's not the place because people say, I want to watch or listen to my podcast when I feel like doing it. So, and I'm guilty too. I get up in the morning, I take the dog, I go out, and I go through what the new podcasts of the day are, and that's what I listen to, as I'm walking the dog. Because, it's where it is, Joan.
Yeah. Well, today, before I started the show, and this is quite possibly too much information, Paul, I went to get my yearly mammogram. And, I'm checking in at the little registration. And, Paul, I've been away from television for a very long time. You left like 5 minutes ago. I've been gone for like 20 years. And this youngish woman behind the counter, she looked up at me and she goes, are you the one from television? And I was like, yeah, thinking to myself, honey, you weren't born then.
Right.
And she said to me, my dad and I used to watch you. So there was the component, the dad component, because when it comes to cable news, local news, the audience is, if you're lucky, you have people in their 50s, but most of it is 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right. And here's, one of the reasons my kids never watch my show. And part of that is because it's kind of like if they wanted to see it, they'll just go online when they feel like it and they'll watch it then. These days, nobody, certainly in their 20s, 30s, whatever, wants to feel that this appointment television thing that you and I grew up with doesn't exist anymore, but not for us. It's no matter what it is. And even if football game or some game that people want to watch, they might, record it and watch it on their own time and just try, good luck avoiding the news to find out who won or lost. But it's just the way it is. So it's been a lot of fun sort of going to the podcast world and feeling a little more free there as well than I did on television. And there's nobody in my ear telling me to go to break or to wrap it or to do anything else.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I want to do.
And not that you would, but you can say a lot of words on podcasts that you can't say on the radio or on television.
You can. I still am hesitant to do that. I grew up not doing that.
Because if I'm being interviewed on a podcast, if something escapes my mouth, my initial reaction is panic. I'm on the radio, and they're going to dump me. Now I have to, fill for the next 7 seconds till it catches up again. And then I'm like, no, it's a podcast. It's a podcast. It's a brave new world.
Right.
But yeah.
I have to tell you, I was hosting on WGN Radio one day, and this was years ago. I had the cast of Book of Mormon on. Now, good luck trying to play a song from the Book of Mormon.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that one, kiddo.
I thought I found one, the song I Believe, and it was a beautiful song. And I played it with the cast sitting with me, but I forgot that when the song kind of has its end, there is a swear word, one of the worst, that gets said. And I remember the cast looked at me, and I was sort of like, oh, my God, because I wasn't expecting it. And the producer came in my ear, and she went, I got it.
Oh.
Because there's just such fear. And one time on a podcast, on my theater podcast called Curtain Call Chicago, I was interviewing, if you know who Leah Delaria is, the actress. She used to be Orange is the New Black and whatever. And she's a comedian and incredibly foul-mouthed. And when we started, I said, Leah, please, I know it's okay, it's a podcast, but please don't. Because at that time, my podcasts were also running on WGN+, so there was a TV component to it. Well, let's just say I could not run that podcast on WGN+, because even though she said I understand, the F word was the hello. I mean, it just never ended. And but that's the way some people are as part of, in her case, part of her humor. And it was pretty funny, but I couldn't play it.
You know, Paul, not only do we have politics in common, but I love live theater. I mean, you know, movies are great. I'm not gonna trash them. I don't go out to the movies nearly as much as I did before COVID because, you know, you wait a few weeks and it's on your television.
Right.
But I will get dressed, you know, put some makeup on and comb my hair and go to see live theater. I love Writers Theater. I love Northlight Theater. I love Shakespeare Theater. I love Steppenwolf. I think that there's something about that art form, and it's not like any other art form to me. I don't know. I'm not very articulate about this. Have you thought about this? Can you say this better?
I don't know that I see it better, but because I do a weekly podcast about theater, but here's what I think you'll find interesting. While a lot of my shows, I sit with the cast of a show, like Catch As Catch Can at Steppenwolf with Gary Cole and others, and that's fascinating. But sometimes I take a little twist in it. So The Outsiders, right, which just wrapped its run here in Chicago. Great show based on a great book. But what people may not know is that the book for the musical was written by Adam Rapp. Adam Rapp, who is very well known for other plays that he's done, he's also the brother of Anthony Rapp, who created the role of Mark in Rent. So I said, you know what? I don't want an actor from The Outsiders. I've done that. Let's get Adam Rapp. And they did. And so, and by the way, people who are listening to us right now, oh, I missed the show. No, you didn't, because it's YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, and in that case, Curtain Call Chicago, and it's all, my very first show is still there. You just look through them and play it. But what you're reminding me is I'm going to plug one little thing here, because on Sunday night, and this is my show this week, there is at Ravinia Sing Along Grease, and I'm going to be hosting it, emceeing it. And so this Sunday night at 5:30, for your listeners that have families, they can dress up their kids as Danny and Sandy and whatever. 5:30 Sunday, get tickets at Ravinia, the lawn, there'll be screens, or the pavilion. I'm going to host it. We've got lots of fun stuff. I have a couple of original cast members from Grease who I tracked down and are going to join me, and a couple of young actors who played Danny and Sandy recently in Chicago. And we're going to teach the families, the kids, how to do some of the things you got to do in Grease, like the hand jive and whatever. Then the movie will get underway. It's a sing-along. The words will be posted on the screen. It's going to be a great night. That's this Sunday starting at 5:30.
My God,
I hope you don't mind. That's a little
amazing.
plug, but it's a personal plug because I'm doing it.
Yo, you should be plugging something like that. You know, I've loved theater for a long time. As you know, there was a time many years ago where Chicago was so exciting. We had Steppenwolf, we had Organic Theater, we had Remains Theater, and they were doing such amazing work. And I remember going to my news director and saying, we should do like a series of reports on some of the people who are doing such amazing theater in Chicago. And they kind of looked at me like, okay. And I'm like, this is like the most exciting city in the entire world right now for live theater, and it's right here. And I think it was more like, oh, we don't really care, but she wants to do it. I suppose we'll let her. And one of the people I interviewed was Gary Cole. And I got a picture of him from his prom, and he wore this maroon jacket that I can't get out of my head. So much of my previous life I have completely forgotten. But for some reason, that maroon jacket, that cranberry jacket, will live with me till the day I die, and I have no idea why.
And, when you do something like that, like talk to Kerry Cole, again, when we did those things on television, let's be honest, we're reaching a Chicagoland audience. But when you do it these days, I'm talking you into doing a podcast. When you do a podcast and you interview Gary Cole, my goodness, I was getting hundreds of views, because then there are pages on Instagram called Fans of Gary Cole, and they find you. And once they find you and they like you and they share you, boom, the views start going up, because his fans worldwide start to tune in and watch this thing. So I think that's one of the reasons that the YouTubes and those kind of podcast things of the world are so big today, is because no longer do you have to say, oh, you're out of my viewing range. Today there's nobody outside
my ADI,
your viewing range.
I'm sorry, you're beyond my ADI. Which, for those who didn't grow up in television, it was your area of dominant influence. Like, where did your signal go?
Right. Right. What's your wattage? You know, but by the way, that's true for WCPT because people may say, oh, it's an AM station. I'm not getting it at home. But you don't have to just get it on your radio at home.
Right.
Today you go, as you know, you go online, you go to WCPT, you got to
And
come.
you know what, Paul? I know I'm running late, Matt. Give me a second. A lot of the people who listen all across the country because they listen on their computer. You go to heartlandsignal.com, you click the listen live button, and it's great. It's absolutely great. And I will reveal a little secret before we wrap up. If you listen on the stream, there's no dump button on the stream. So if a bad word goes out on the stream, you will hear it. A bad word you will not hear on the radio. So there you go. Another reason to listen to the stream.
Exactly.
Paul, we are out of time. I don't know how this happens. It is.
I don't know because the hour flew by, and I was just so looking forward to it all week. And thank you. And I hope we didn't run into somebody else's time. But it's just such an honor and pleasure to be with you.